Hi, I'm Bianca Borges. For Milk Street, I have been recipe developer, TV cast member, food editor, and I very happily devoted 4 full months of my life to this Japanese cheesecake. And then the kitchen took the helm and devoted another 4 to 5 months to it. Well, first off, this is a cheesecake that comes out of Japan, which right off the bat there is very unusual because the Japanese don't usually like heavy dairy type things. However, it is not heavy. It is incredibly light and spongy. It actually is a cross between a sponge cake and a cheesecake, or it's a sponge cake that just happens to have cream cheese in it. It's extraordinary, and it really does go right along with the Japanese sensibility of texture and everything, and nothing is overly sweetened. Full disclosure, when we first started working on this cheesecake, I had heard of it, but I had never tasted it. So I went out to a chain that in New York City that was supposed to have a great Japanese cheesecake called Uncle Tetsu. Well, it was in New York City, but when I got there, it was completely closed down and something else was in its place. Anyway, our recipe editor, Dawn, knew this cheesecake really, really well. She described it to me. I read up on it. I did a lot of research. I watched a lot of YouTube videos in Japanese, and I figured out the best way to approach this cheesecake. There were so many different recipes across the board with different proportions of ingredients, basically all the same set of ingredients, but wildly different proportions. So it was a little touch and go there in the beginning. I sort of equated it to an ugly duckling that eventually became a beautiful swan, but it took a long time to get there. But along the way, I probably literally fell in love with this cheesecake. It is since, in a way, become part of my DNA, meaning it will never be away from me. I will always have it within me. It's that good. The procedure for it is not difficult, but there are a few areas where you really need to pay attention to the recipe, follow the directions pretty specifically because they make such a difference in the outcome.
Would you say that's one of the reasons why we tested this so much? I think this is the most testing I've ever seen for any one recipe, right? Would you agree?
It's not, but it's one of the most.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many times have we made this cheesecake, guys?
According to the head note, 24.
Wow. We're gonna get it.
And it's because of those very delicate variables that developing this recipe took such a long time. We tested so many variables, so many little increments of change to see what about this cheesecake it really was that mattered, what part really mattered the most, and what parts, if you veered from them, were going to have the biggest effect.
The last test we did, we felt like the cake could have baked a little bit longer. We also are going to check the temperature of the base of the cheesecake, make sure it's cool enough before we add flour, so that because flour can start to gelatinize if it's too warm, we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm gonna fiddle with this a little bit and wait until the base is down to 140, then whip my egg whites, and then proceed with putting it together.
Dawn was making it out in her kitchen in California. I was making it in my kitchen here in New York. The Milk Street developers were making it both in the Milk Street kitchen and at home. I have to admit, I think most of them because they really liked the cheesecake. No, but we were also testing home ovens, right? Because the oven is key. The oven makes a huge difference. We did all the final testing here at Milk Street so that we could give you a reliable indication of oven temperature, whether it needs to be turned down and when, whether the oven door needs to be propped open and the cheesecake left in for a little while, and of course how long the cheesecake takes to bake. You know, when we do recipes, we also give a lot of visual cues because those are very helpful because we know every kitchen's a little bit different. Every oven behaves a little bit different. Every cook is different. What someone might consider a gentle whisk would be a heavy whisk for somebody else. So we try and give visual cues so you know exactly what you're looking for and the point at which each step should reach before going on to the next one. One of Milk Street's attributes is that we try and put a very unique spin on something. And when we say spin, we mean really more of an angle, a very unique angle to a recipe. Something that sort of makes it easier for the home cook to accomplish the recipe while also adding something unique, and that's what we try and do. With this particular cheesecake, some of us have real strong pastry backgrounds, myself one, Dawn another one, and I remembered way back in my teaching days when you're making a meringue that's going to be folded into a soft substance for a cake or a mousse or anything like that, you can actually make the meringue by combining the egg whites and the sugar together all at once and then whipping. And that was like a mind-blowing thing because I was reminded of that, and it works like a dream with this recipe. We start with raw egg whites. They can be cold or they can be room temperature, and it doesn't make a difference. That is also unusual for a meringue. So raw egg whites, and as a stabilizer, rather than cream of tartar, we use a little bit of lemon juice because we have some lemon zest in the cheesecake later, so we figured to go ahead and use the lemon juice. It's acidic, so it gives the same stabilizing effect. And then we add all the sugar, and it's granulated sugar. So we just add it all in at once in the mixing bowl. Makes it so easy. Then you turn the mixer on, you mix it on low until it's fully blended. Then you turn it up and you start whipping the aeration into it. And you can watch it turn from this sort of opaque, sort of, egg white color mixture to this pure white, fluffy, shiny, glossy meringue. It's one of the most beautiful meringues there is. It's just a little bit denser than the ordinary meringue that you get when streaming in the sugar, but that also makes it creamier, and it's a lot easier to fold into a soft, liquidy substance. It worked like a dream.
Talk to me about the main things you were trying to achieve with development.
The must-have attributes of this Japanese cheesecake are it needs to have a really nice rise, and for the most part that means it's going to rise higher than a standard cake pan. It needs to have a slightly domed top that gets a beautiful golden hue on it, and the sides don't get brown at all. The sides stay completely white.
Beautiful. It's beautiful, yeah. It's really nice. Got a jiggle.
We also think about equipment, and we will try our best to use equipment that the home cook is likely to already have in their kitchen. So instead of asking for a 4-inch high cake pan, which a lot of people would have to go out and buy, even though that's the kind of cake pan this cheesecake is usually baked in, we developed our recipe to be made in a standard 9-inch round cake pan, which almost everybody has one of those. So to help reinforce the height of the sides, because this cheesecake rose above the level of that pan, we made a paper collar, which is something commonly done with soufflés. It allows the cake to rise higher than the pan level, and it keeps the sides of the cake light colored. It helps prevent the browning from the metal cake pan. So it accomplished both of our goals at once. The next thing is this cake is generally baked in a water bath. Now, water baths are a pain in the neck for the most part, especially moving a big pan in and out of the oven and all that. So we did a lot of testing to see if the water bath really was necessary. We even tried baking it on a wet towel, on a sheet tray. We tried shallow water. We tried deep water. We tried all sorts of things. It turns out you really do need the water bath. But we did find that you didn't need as much water as some of the recipes call for. We use a little less water, almost half as much as the most common recipes call for, because we also didn't want the cake pan to float. And if you put too much water in there, the batter is extremely light. We tell you how high up on the pan to pour it because that really does make a difference. The texture of this cake. This is where you want to forget everything you already think you know about cheesecake, because the texture is key, and the texture is what makes this a Japanese cheesecake, and the texture is what makes this thing something you will not forget eating and makes it part of my DNA for me.
Oh, it's so light. I don't know why I thought it was going to be heavy.
Well, yeah.
The texture is light, it's spongy, it's ethereal. It feels almost like a cloud, and yet because of the cream cheese and the dairy in there, it's got a beautiful mouthfeel. It's very silky. It's the kind of thing that if you like that kind of texture, you start eating it and you can't stop. You literally can't stop. This cheesecake, it can be eaten at room temperature, which is a very traditional way to serve it, and it can be eaten cold, just like regular cheesecake, right? It's a little bit different both ways, but it is so equally good. During the testing of this cheesecake, because I'm testing different versions, sometimes 2 or 3 in a day, and sometimes a few days in a row. And I just found myself sometimes the first slice, taking it off and standing right there in front of the fridge and eating it because I couldn't wait to get it in my mouth. It's so good. Normally we try to keep the recipe wording very condensed. Plus, we don't want a recipe to sound more complicated than it is. This recipe, we took the liberty of adding a little more detail to it because these details make a difference. The first time you see this recipe, you might think, oh, heck no, I'm not making that. It's too complicated, or it's too long, or it's too persnickety. Just look it over, sort of get the steps together in your mind, because then you'll realize it really isn't that complicated. And if your sides wrinkle a little bit, or if the top doesn't get as brown as you think it should, or if it gets a little bit too brown, really nothing matters. You're not selling this cheesecake. You're eating it. You're enjoying it. You may be serving it to guests. So what matters is the inside, the texture, and how it tastes. And I hope you love it even half as much as we do, because that will be a win.